All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And my name is Stan.
And as you can see here, Eric is not here this week. He's not feeling too well, but I'm sure he'll be back next week. But that's okay. It's me and Stan. I think we can carry the show without him, but we'll be glad to have him back next week. But let's go over the topics we're going to be discussing today. We have lots and lots of delays that were really, really weird. But we have the 7 remake. We got CyberPunk that was delayed. I know there are some other games as well. The Avengers game was delayed. But we're going to get into basically the Final Fantasy VII Remake and the Cyberpunk 2077 delays. Then Horizon Zero Dawn, it appears, according to Kotaku, that this game is going to be coming to PC. As you may know, that's a little weird because Horizon Zero Dawn is owned by Sony, or is a Sony property, so we're going to talk about that. And then Mobius Final Fantasy, the service is shutting down this year, so we want to get into that a little bit. And then we're going to finally top things off with our top 5 most anticipated JRPGs or RPGs for 2020. And then we'll have a Discord question. What's your unpopular RPG opinions? So that's from Decoy Manta, by the way. So a lot of topics here. We're really excited to get into it here. But let's go ahead and jump into our very first topic. So we've been kind of joking around a little bit for like the last year or 8 months. Basically, ever since we've gotten a release date for Final Fantasy VII Remake, that, until this game's delayed, because almost every Final Fantasy / Kingdom Hearts property by Square Enix ends up getting delayed to some extent. So in this case, it's not so bad. We have April 10th, 2020, as opposed to March 3rd. So I know that some people are kind of bummed out about that, but they basically said that, hey, we want to polish this game up, make sure that we can deliver the best possible product. And there's actually a statement from Katase that Stan quoted here on our outline here. So I'm just going to go ahead and read that, so that way you all can be on the same page that we are on. So this is from Katase, who says, who's producing the game, by the way. He's the original director of Final Fantasy VII. He says, we know that so many of you are looking forward to the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake and have been waiting patiently to experience what we have been working on. In order to ensure we deliver a game that is in line with our vision and the quality that our fans who have been waiting for deserve, we have decided to move the release date to April 10th, 2020. We are making this tough decision in order to give ourselves a few extra weeks to apply final polish to the game and to deliver to you with the best possible experience. I, on behalf of the whole team, want to apologize to everyone, as I know this means waiting for the game just a little bit longer. Thank you for your patience and continued support. As you will notice, he did not say, and please be excited, which I'm disappointed because that's like a Square Enix quote at this point. But I mean, it's a month. I have some thoughts on this, but Stan, I know you had an interesting point regarding the actual date of April 10th that you brought up for the podcast. That you want to reiterate that here now that we're streaming?
Yeah, well, April 10th is Good Friday, which is a religious holiday in a lot of Western countries. And so, depending on where you live, it's observed more casually or officially, I guess, in different countries and different states in the US. So, there's a chance that, like I know in particular, there was an article that I read from Kotaku that said in Australia, they don't even get mail, and businesses, like most retail stores, are closed on that day, which means people are going to have to wait an extra day, basically, which kind of sucks. It's already been delayed, and you don't want to have to be waiting any longer than you already are. It's a very anticipated game, but
Yeah.
I mean, people will have to make do, I guess, or maybe if there's maybe you should check where you pre-ordered it and confirm if you'll be able to pick it up on the 10th or not.
That's a really interesting point, though, when you brought it up, because it makes me wonder if they are going to readjust the date just a little bit. Because, yeah, Friday is a really good day
Hmm.
to release your game. People can go pick it up. They look forward to it. they need a lot of people want something to do over the weekend. So just having a game release on Friday I think it really gets people out of their house to go pick up the game and play it over the weekend. But if it's Good Friday and in your area they're not really delivering mail or a lot of places are closed, you know, it might be kind of difficult for you to get the game. So I have to suspect that they've got some kind of consideration for that, and maybe it could come out on that Thursday. You
That
know,
would be a yeah, that would be a good idea if in certain countries, like if especially if there's not even going to be any mail, like because then if you've ordered it from Amazon or whatever online retailer, you're still not going to get it if there's no mail on
right,
Friday. So
right,
you would think that maybe Square would allow it to come out like Thursday for certain regions, and then
yeah.
people can play it on their off day on Friday.
Here's the thing from my own personal experience, right? I was doing a if anybody knows Mike from Resident Art slash Dark Pixel Gaming at the time, he was doing these streams, like daily streams of Final Fantasy 12 as part of his like Patreon only streams, and I was on that Patreon tier where we could be part of these streams, and I was on the Skype call with him every day for the entirety of Final Fantasy 12, right? So we're going through Final Fantasy 12 every day, and like a lot of times we're doing like long play sessions, like 4 or 5 hours. And this is practically like 5 days a week, 6 days a week, just streaming on YouTube Final Fantasy 12. And like I was just getting like really into it. And when the stream was going to finish, we were going to run into Zodiac Age, right? And the reason I bring that up is because I was so excited for the Zodiac Age just because, it was just Final Fantasy 12 was on my mind, right? At that point in
Hmm.
time, I was really looking forward to it. Like I was like watching the trailers every day, getting like pumped up for it. They were making all these cool changes with the job system, and Amazon was 2 days late and I pre-ordered it. And people that had bought it on like the Wednesday or whatever beforehand had gotten it like the day it came out. And I was like losing my mind because I'm like on Discord and people are talking about it. And like I see people streaming it. And I'm just like, dude, I pre ordered this like 4 months ago. Like, Amazon, you suck, right? So
Hmm.
I totally sympathize with this. And like, I do think, especially for the 7 remake, it would be very disappointing to those people. So
Yeah,
I gotta think they have to do something. So,
would hope so. Yeah,
yeah.
because I've been there. Where yeah, as I've gotten older, it's kind of more difficult to play games like on the same day that they release,
Right.
just because I'm really busy working a lot and I have other responsibilities. But I was there, just a few years ago, like when a new game was coming out, I wanted to play that thing as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't, and which happens sometimes, it was a big bummer.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so hopefully they can
Resolve that.
make it right. Yeah, do something for those people who have this issue.
So, one thing about this delay, though, on a very personal note, and I think you were going along the same lines, is like April 10th for me in my age group with my full time job. April 10th is a lot better than March 3rd because, like, dude, like that, like March, that's like the peak of like where I work. That's just like as busy as it possibly gets the entire year. And I was
Accounting,
like,
right?
yeah, and I'm in
Yeah.
accounting. So, like, I was like, dude, like, and then like this game's coming out. I'm on an RPG podcast. Like, I'm like, I love Final Fantasy VII. So, like, I'm going to feel so much pressure to like get through this game in like
Hmm.
4 days or something, right? And like I'm just like I'm gonna have no sleep. I'm gonna be stressed out because of my job. So April 10th is a lot better. Still not. It's not as good as like May for me personally, but I'm okay with April 10th. So
Yeah, me too. Likewise, just really busy this first 2 3 months of the year, and typically April May is where it kind of slows down where I'm at. So selfishly, I'm okay with this delay, but I don't want them to delay based on. I mean, obviously they did it for other reasons, but
yeah,
it does suck for people who are in the opposite situation who were planning for March and maybe even took vacation time,
Yeah, that was the
few
other
days
thing.
or whatever to play the game to the just play the game when it comes out. And yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was another thing because when this game got announced, I was thinking to myself like, whatever job I have, I'm asking for the whole week off, right?
mhm,
There's no way I would be able to get a whole week off in March, but or even April. But if you are that person, like you're getting down to the wire here where you have to like cancel your vacation, that could definitely be that would definitely suck because it's something you've been looking forward to. However, on a positive note though, I will say that like this rollout of the release date and then their announcement that it's been moved back a little bit has been handled so much better than Final Fantasy 15. If you remember,
mhm,
Square held this huge like uncovered Final Fantasy 15 event, and at the end of the whole thing, they had these two guys like bickering over like pressing this red button, like, oh, I'm gonna press it, I'm gonna press it, don't let him press it, right? And like if he presses the button, it'll show the release date, and it was totally cringy. And like after at the end of the show, he presses it, like fireworks are going off and stuff, and it shows like I can't remember the date now. It was like September 30th. Then like 2 weeks later, like Tabata's sitting there in like front of a camera, like, sorry to disappoint you, but it's coming out in November. Like I was like, you guys didn't know that back when that presentation was going on. You had no idea, you know. So I do think they've handled this rollout a little bit better, where they just put a release date out there. This is what we're going for, but then they let us know here well in advance, and it's a month. It's not that big of a deal. One small caveat though that I would say is that I'm trying to be careful with my expectations here because small delays like this can be very innocent most of the time, right? It could be like amounting to bug fixes. Maybe they're trying to resolve like supply chain issues with the worldwide release, or, a whole host of things that they're trying to figure out last minute. But sometimes there's, very small indicators of a game that's being pushed out the door quicker than it needs to be. And I'm not saying that's happening here, but if we look at Square in the past, consider that Tabata stated in an interview that the development team for Final Fantasy 15 requested a 6 to 9 month delay, and Square authorized a 2 month delay because they wanted to get the game out before Christmas. So, that does happen, right? And when they
mhm.
say they're delaying a month, it makes me wonder how much time did they really want a month? And, Square does have a pretty big deadline here. They need to get this game out before the PlayStation 5 because they don't want a game that's optimized for the PS4 to come out while a PS5's out and like
Right.
every title looks better than it. But um, I,
And
I I do think that's a slight fear mongering concern though, because I mean Katase is on the board of Square Enix and he's producing the game. I'm pretty sure Katase gets whatever he wants. He's like
yeah.
I think he has a lot bigger pull than Tabata.
Yeah, if there was ever a game they needed to make sure was finished before it came out, it
Yeah,
would
they
be this one.
they can't.
there's,
Yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of people who are, so on Square Enix these days and are really looking at this game to see if they, you know, still have it basically,
yeah.
if they're still a top tier
Well,
company like they used to be. Many
well,
people don't think they are, but
mhm.
this is their chance to prove them wrong, essentially.
Well, Final Fantasy VII is their biggest IP, right? And the last
Mhm.
thing they want to do is jack that up. And on top of that, they've committed to making multiple games, and these games cost a ton of money to make.
They do, yeah.
So if it comes out and it's like terrible, like it starts getting the reception that 13 got when Final Fantasy 13 when that came out, like, and they realize they have to spend AAA money on like possibly two more of these games. Like that's they don't they need this game to get like a 9.5 out of 10 across the board. So I definitely think that this is probably them making sure that there's no like critical bug or anything where like reviewers are like, well, it's a good game, but because of this bug, I have to give it a 7. It's like they need to just
Yeah.
make sure like, none of that happens. So, was there anything else you wanted to talk about with the delay? I know that we're going to tie some of our thoughts with this into Cyberpunk, but
Yeah, after I think we better get to
Okay,
Cyberpunk as well.
cool. So, quickly after Square announced that the 7 remake was going to be delayed till April 10th, we then heard from CD Projekt Red, who said that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be delayed until September 17th.
17th. Yeah.
So, um, I
That's like
didn't,
a 6-month delay.
yeah, like I was kind of seeing online that a lot of people were complaining about the 7 remake. Like they were just furious about this month delay. And
Mhm.
then, but like the Cyberpunk delay, like the fan base was just like, oh, good, take as much time as you need. And it's like, that's like 6 times as long. Like,
Right.
but, um, I don't know. You kind of had a interesting point, regarding this with, the timing. Did you want to kind of bring that up right now?
Yeah, it just makes me wonder if because this delay got announced 2 days after FF7 Remake got delayed, and so I was wondering, did Square Enix know like ahead of time, or did they determine that they need to delay their game and they're trying to pick a date, and then they did they did they have CD Project Red's phone number and just call them up and say, hey, are you still committed to that date on the 16th?
Right.
Or something, and then they told them like, "Oh, we're gonna push it back soon," and then they were like, "Okay, cool, we'll take the 10th." you know, I wonder because it was really puzzling like the first couple days when FF7 moved to the 10th
Mm-hmm.
and Cyberpunk was going to come out on the 16th because
Yeah.
that situation seemed like a very bad situation for RPG fans, right? To have to choose. There are a lot of people who will only get one or the other, but you
There's a
know,
lot of crossover, I think.
yeah, there's a lot of people who want to play all the AAA RPG games that come out in a year, or as many of them as they can.
There's a lot of people I've heard from a lot of people that that are primarily like PC gamers and like kind of that crowd that liked Final Fantasy VII, right? But
Hmm.
like they didn't like any of the other Final Fantasy games.
Yeah,
Like, they're like, I liked Final Fantasy VII. That was like I played that as a kid, but I tried to play like Final Fantasy X and like I just couldn't get into it, and I just kind of
hmm,
like never played them again. So there's a lot of people because you got to remember the Final Fantasy VII sold way more than all the other games. So I think there's a lot of people that, to your point,
and at,
that would play
and at a time,
Cyberpunk and 7 remake, but if they have to choose, they're not huge Final Fantasy fans. They'll just wait, and they may never pick it up,
right? Yeah,
or they'll pick it up when it costs $20 or something. You know, um,
yeah,
I again,
it,
like I think for my schedule, this works a lot better because I do admit when I first saw that 7 remake was coming out on April 10th, I was like, oh, that's gonna suck because that's totally cutting into my Cyberpunk time. And if
hmm,
I had to choose every day, Final Fantasy VII Remake for me personally, I will buy that and play that over Cyberpunk, even though like I'm really looking forward to Cyberpunk. It's just, dude, like I've been looking forward to this game for Final Fantasy VII Remake for such a long time. But
hmm,
so again, I'm kind of glad about this delay, and like if it's going to be a better game, I think that's fantastic. But um, it's kind of interesting they pushed it back so far though, because I'm assuming we can expect to see more of this game at E3 now, whereas before it wasn't going to be at E3.
yeah. Um,
I mean, it's
that's
launching
true.
right after, right?
Yeah, I would expect it to have like a full blown big reveal. Well, I mean, it's already been revealed, but like a big,
Like
exciting
demos.
gameplay demonstration. Yeah, like on stage, somebody playing it. Um,
The thing is, they can't top last year with Keanu Reeves. Like that
well,
was
what if
pretty.
Keanu Reeves is there playing the game?
Yeah, is that as cool though? I mean, they'd have to get another
I don't know.
actor. They'd have to get like Liam
Maybe.
Neeson, and he like pops out. Like I don't know if that'd be cool, but I would think that was cool.
Yeah. Oh, I think part of the reason for the really long delay, though, is that you typically don't see AAA games release in the summertime. So it may have been the case that once they decided it was going to be delayed and they were like in that late May timeframe, they decided just to push it all the way back till end of summer in September,
See,
because in the summertime, a lot of people go on vacation, right?
right.
They spend a lot of their income on trips and different things like that. Movies, maybe, all the Hollywood blockbusters come out in the summertime.
For sure. So,
So, but
go
yeah,
ahead.
like for big games, you typically see them released like um, in the fall and then the early part of the year, like where we are right now, and then once you hit, I feel like in the last few years, once you hit April, it's like usually pretty dead because, like you said, companies are just waiting for E3 to then kind of announce big games that are coming out later in the year.
Just get hype. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were bringing up earlier that kind of jokingly, hey, was Square and CD Projekt Red, were they talking? Was this planned? Because it seemed kind of weird that Square would put themselves in the same window as Cyberpunk.
Hmm.
And I wonder because, okay, let me back up here. There's been a lot of hubbub on the internet and chatter about, with leaks from the developers and stuff like that, and they're all saying the same thing, that the developers are working a lot of hours, that CD Projekt Red, because of the success of Witcher 3 and like the critical acclaim that game got, it's like one of the best games of the decade, etc.
Hmm.
They feel a lot of pressure to have this recreate that.
Oh, I
And
bet.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so they're trying to be really ambitious with this title and really push it to be like the total, like, push this generation's consoles to the like max that it can go. And so a lot of times, what we're hearing is that they'll be trying to do an idea and they'll work on it for like 3 months and then they have to drop it, right? Because they just can't get it to run well on the PS4, because it's too ambitious. And we saw this in the past with Final Fantasy 15, where Nomura was trying to make destructible environments and insomnia, and like they were going to have like all these buildings be able to crash down and break pillars as you're crashing through them, and they just couldn't get that to run well and have these giant creatures running through the streets, and like it was taking too much time, and they had to drop it. So I'm not saying Cyberpunk's going to go down the same road as 15. Clearly, it's not, but at least in terms of development time. But um, I do wonder if they were under so much pressure to get this game out and have it be good and have it not be filled with bugs. And once they saw Square delay it to delay it to April 10th, I think they were already kind of like talking like on the edge about delaying it, but they're still like, I don't know. And then once Square did it, they were just like, all right, that's the hair that breaks the camel's back. Like they're just like, screw it. Let's just delay
Yeah.
it till freaking September, because the timing of that was really interesting. How that came about. So
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
also,
both in the same week.
yeah, for sure. I also thought it was kind of interesting that it, because it is being pushed out so far, it's kind of like, wow, you guys could have done like an August release date or like a July release date. I mean, September, uh, was it 17th?
Yeah.
Yeah, September,
September 17th.
September 17th. That's getting real close to the PS5. We don't have a release date for the PS5, but there's
Hmm.
been a lot of speculation that, Sony's looking at like a late October release.
Yeah, it's supposed to be before Christmas for sure, and before Black Friday, I would think as well.
Yeah, so if it is a late October release, I think that there's a fair amount of people that are going to look at this game and say, that looks amazing. I bet it will look even better on the PlayStation 5. Or, yeah,
Me,
you?
yeah, yeah, exactly. um, we're getting later on a little bit, getting ahead of myself a little bit, but later on we're doing our top five most anticipated games coming out this year, and Cyberpunk was on my list a little bit lower, right?
Hmm.
But now I have it as an honorable mention because yeah, I want to play the game in the best possible version I can, and if I just have to wait, like if it comes out on September 17th, but then the new consoles come out October, November, and then I can play a better version of it, possibly, you know, early 2021 or so, I'll wait. you know,
Yeah. I
like
mean, it's still going to be a $60 game regardless, you know?
yeah,
And I mean, a lot of people, when they get the PlayStation 5, they're going to be, and I'm saying PlayStation 5 because, I'm a Sony guy here, but I'm sure, if you want to get it on the next Xbox, same deal, but
hmm
the Xbox Series X. But there's going to be a lot of people like you spend your $400 on a game on a console or $500, however much these consoles eventually solidify to be. A lot of launch titles are not very good, right? So if you're just like, oh, I could get this Cyberpunk game, or I could get this like other game that like no one's heard of, like
hmm
it's going to be really tempting. And if they had released this game in April as planned, they could have made all those PS4 sales, and then that would have been enough time for people to probably buy the game again. But if I just bought the game in September and put 80 hours into it or however long, there's no way. I'm just gonna be like, well, I guess I'm playing it again. Like, like on the PlayStation 5. It's just kind of an interesting window that they chose. So I'm assuming that, they had a really good reason to do this. So
yeah. I mean, it must have really needed the delay for them to push it back so far to the end of the year.
yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. Um, let's get a well. We'll just keep on with the topics before I was going to get into our housekeeping segment, but let's just keep moving on with the topics here because we're in a nice flow here, and we'll get to that point here shortly. But we also had Horizon Zero Dawn that's reportedly coming to the PC. Now this isn't confirmed, but it's from Kotaku, so they're usually pretty good. They say they have sources that are saying that it's going to come out on PC, and it seems pretty reasonable to believe this isn't 4chan or something like that. And it's kind of interesting because Sony owns Horizon Zero Dawn, so I was totally flabbergasted when I played this game back when it came out. And the one thing I thought was, I bet this would be awesome on PC. And I remember I brought it up on the podcast, and Eric was like, "That would be cool, but no, it's a Sony game, not happening." And here we are talking about it. Not that anyone had. Eric was totally right. There was no way anyone would have thought this would have happened, but apparently there's a good chance here that Horizon Zero Dawn's coming to PC. So, what did you think about that, Stan?
yeah, I mean, it is a little surprising because, um, like you said, there's no other than Death Stranding, right? And also, um, I think like Detroit Become Human is
Right.
also on PC. But yeah, this is supposed to be like a PS4 system seller type of game, right? Now, it's been what coming up on 3 years now, I think, since the game came out, maybe
Sure.
even longer. So they may be thinking at this point, anybody who wants to play this game on PS4 has bought it already, you know, and they can make some more money off of it by releasing it to PC finally.
I think
That
I'm
would
in.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my best guess.
I think I'm in agreement with you. Like they don't. I don't think they're in love with the idea of putting it on PC, but Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or whatever it's called is going to be coming out on the PlayStation 5. I think that they're trying to build hype for the PlayStation 5,
hmm
and they already
Oh,
got
that,
the audience with the PS4. So they thought, you know what? We've been putting this game out for like $10 on the PS4 for holiday sales. It's been selling like crazy. Let's just go ahead and put it on PC. We'll capture some more of that audience that never got to play it. And maybe they'll look forward to this sequel on the PS5 and buy a PlayStation 5.
that's a good point. I didn't think of that. Um,
Yeah.
you could release the game to an audience that hasn't played it yet to try and get them, if they really like the game, if it's a good port of the game and well made, and people really enjoy it, then they may consider buying the PS5 if the PS5 is launching with Horizon Zero Dawn 2, you know.
Yeah. So it's a good strategy. I think I'm glad that Sony's coming around to this idea of just like, okay, like exclusives don't have to be totally exclusive. they can work in your benefit to have your properties elsewhere. I don't think we'll ever see Nintendo doing this with like, you know, well, Breath of the Wild's been out for 4 years, so let's go ahead and put Breath of the Wild on Steam because Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out. I don't
Nah,
think Nintendo has that mindset. But
they don't even have the mindset to discount their games very much.
yeah, like keep them like full cost for like 28 years. Yeah.
Yeah, much less release them on a different platform.
Yeah. But at least with Horizon Zero Dawn, that's definitely a game I think would really benefit from being on PC. So I was surprised when Death Stranding, to be honest, was announced for PC. That was kind of a interesting
Yeah, and
reveal.
before it even came out, I
Yeah, they're
think
like,
it was revealed. Yeah,
yeah. So, but I kind of figured like, okay, well maybe this was like something Kojima like insisted on, or something like that. But I don't know. Seems like they're kind of taking a different approach here. So I like it.
yeah,
I'm probably gonna buy it on PC. It's gonna be great.
yeah. Well, maybe we'll get some more details about it in the
That,
coming weeks
that's
or shortly before it's about to come out, probably.
Yeah, that is true. This is Kotaku getting sources from the from developers and not actual. This hasn't like they haven't come out and officially stated that this was happening. So, but I keep saying it's
It's more than a
Kotaku.
rumor, I
Yeah,
think, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah, it's not like you said, it's not just like somebody on a forum somewhere. No, it's like Jason Schreier's reporting on it, and he's like their top insider guy. So he's not gonna make a claim like that unless there's something to it, at least plans.
yeah, it's not Joe Blow who's been on the forum for 3 days. He's like, yeah, I'm a developer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got a little weight behind it for sure. Next up on the news segment here, we got Mobius Final Fantasy is their service is shutting down. So
hmm
it's going to shut down on March 31st, 2020. Our sales of their Magicite will end on March 31st, 2020. And then I believe the total
Game.
support of it will shut down on June 30th, 2020.
hmm
So that's interesting. Um, I mean, it's had a fairly good run a couple of years. I do think it's of note that they're going to. Well, here, I'll just read the quote here that you put in here. It says, this is from Square Enix. It's a statement. It says, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to all of our players who have supported us since service began back on August 3rd, 2016. It is with heavy heart that we must now bring you this sad news. We will continue to implement updates to endgame events, including the conclusion of the Warrior of Despair story until the end of service, so it is our fondest hope that we will see our adventurers' fates to the very last. Thank you for fighting alongside the Warriors of Light and for being a part of the world of Mobius Final Fantasy. May you continue to bring the light of hope to those around you. That was very nicely written, but I don't think that's what they said in the board meeting. But um, anyway, um, yeah. So it's August 3rd, 2016 began service. It's going to run through March 31st, 2020. Or at least the sales of the Magicite, and then the worldwide release of the game or the support of the game are going to close down on June 30th, 2020. That's 4 years. That's not bad. That's actually pretty good. And I think it's notable that they're going to finish the story, the Warrior of Despair story. So they're not going to have cliffhangers. I think that's cool. My only hope with this is that now that the game is going to end officially, support for it anyways, that they might make like a single player version of the game and release it elsewhere that I can play. Because
hmm
I have not played this really at all. I think I downloaded it and played it for like 10 minutes, and then I don't know. I don't know why I never picked it back up. It seemed decent, but I know a lot of people like it, and I would be interested in testing it out, but I can't play it in its current form. I need to play it on like the Switch or something like that.
Yeah, I've never played it either. I'm not really huge into mobile gaming, smartphone gaming. So yeah, not much I can say about it other than um, this is kind of what sucks about like these games as a service, right? As soon as it's not profitable to keep it running, they're gonna shut it down, which is if you're a fan of the game, that's uh that's rough, right? Like I imagine there's people out there. I don't know any personally, but I imagine there's people who got really invested into this game and put a lot of time and money into it, and now it's just going to disappear.
Well,
So
here's the thing though, that is a very real concern because, you know, you and me, we just finished replaying Crisis Core, right? And
hmm
because we're going to be doing a Crisis Core discussion, and it made me want to go back and play Before Crisis, which was a cell phone game
yeah,
that told the story obviously before Crisis Core, and but it's actually supposed to be pretty decent. Like it's like a full fledged RPG, and you know, I've seen like video footage of it and everything, and it looks more produced than you would think. And you know, there's people talk about the story in it and everything, and it's actually pretty decent. And the thing is, because it came out on cell phones and it required you to be connected to the internet to download certain updates and everything like that. This was back in like the, I think the mid 2000s,
hmm
that you can't even emulate the game because of that.
it's a
It's not even,
mess. Yeah.
you like, you can download it, but you can't play it because it can't connect to the server. Like it's a whole issue. So I know that somebody remade the game on RPG Maker, like verbatim, but
Huh.
and you can go download that and play it for free, but the graphics are not anywhere near as good. So it's still like very amazing that they did that, but it's just a sign in this own franchise, the Final Fantasy, that's associated with Final Fantasy VII, right? That they just kind of let go. And Nomura's talked about bringing it back and remaking it and everything like that, but you know, there's not really a good way to play the game now, and so that does happen. And I don't know. I mean, Mobius Final Fantasy, I mean, it went for 4 years, so it wasn't a flop. People really liked it. So I
hmm
gotta think they'll find some way to preserve it. I would hope.
Yeah, I would hope so for the people who are really invested into it. That is there's something, but
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Well, it's not is I guess it's they're not necessarily saying that they're going to delete it off the server, right? They're just saying they're not going to provide support for it. So they're not going to be releasing new content. They're not going to be fixing bugs. You know,
hmm
it's they're not going to make sure it's compatible with the next iPhone. So I guess it's still going to be available, but you know, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, after we've had a couple revisions of cell phones, I don't know. We'll have
Yeah.
to see. So we have a little bit of housekeeping here that we want to bring up. Just always want to direct everyone's attention to our media partners, RPG Fan, rpgfan.com. Make sure you go check out their website. They're a great resource for RPG news, game reviews, soundtrack reviews. They have two RPG podcasts right now, Random Encounter and Retro Encounter. And you can definitely go check them out. They're doing like weekly stuff. So it's really good stuff. Also, they have a YouTube channel where they're starting to post more video content. They're trying to push that out more. Usually they do mostly trailers and that type of thing, but they're putting out video reviews, and they just did a long video on the DLC for Pokemon, for example, giving the thoughts on that. So it's some really good stuff. So rpgfan.com, make sure you go check them out. I also want to shout out that they're currently doing their most anticipated games, and it's like this whole feature that they're doing, and it's really quite like extensive because we're on their they communicate on Slack and some other places, and we're on there because we coordinate with them a lot of times or sometimes, and um, this took a lot of effort for them to put together. So um, definitely go check out their coverage on that stuff. So also want to point out with our own podcast here, we have a crisis core discussion that we said we're going to be doing here. Now, me and Stan have finished the game. I know Eric's been playing the game as well, but I know Eric's played the game several times, so I'm not sure if he's playing on what he's doing. But regardless, we'll be ready for the discussion, and we're looking at doing it in late January timeframe. We do have a date selected for it, but we're probably not going to stream that. But just want to let you guys know that a crisis core discussion is going to be coming. It's going to be a separate video from our typical podcast. So make sure you all look forward to that, as Square Enix would say, right? And then we're going to be doing a Final Fantasy discussion in February. As of right now, it's kind of weird now that the 7 remake's not coming out in March. It's coming out in April, but I still think it's going to work. So we got that coming up as well, where we're just going to replay Final Fantasy VII for the PS1 and talk about it. And we have the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC that's coming out, I think, in like 3 or 4 days here. And right, let's check the date on that, because I don't want to be giving false information here. Let's check this out. Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC release date. January 23rd. Okay, I wasn't losing my mind. So I'm going to be downloading that and playing that. I know Eric's excited to do that as well. So we're going to be giving our impressions on that. So if this is your first time checking us out, really appreciate it if you would subscribe, or you can check out our audio version. There will be a link in the description once we have the audio version uploaded. And I think that's it for our episode of, or can't even talk today, our advertisements for our own podcast here, our promotion effort. So let's get on to the real RPG-ness of this podcast here. We have our top 5 most anticipated RPGs for 2020.
You want to start, or should I?
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of times we'll try to go over like all the RPGs possibly coming out in an entire year. That takes a long time, and we're not excited for like 80% of them. Okay, so to be totally honest, so we're doing our top 5 RPGs that we're most excited for in 2020. Technically, I know me and Stan have some honorable mentions here, so I think really this is going to be like our top 7, but we're calling it top 5 because it sounds better. But let's go with our number 5. So our 5th place pick for our 5th most anticipated RPG for 2020. Stan, what do you have?
For me, it is the Trials of Mana remake. The 3D version of the game that they're making.
Dude, that looks really good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
That looks really good from everything we've seen in the trailers. It's looking like really polished. Like this looks like if I imagined an actual remake, not like that low budget remake they made of Secret of Mana. That was total garbage. I could not even get through that thing. This looks actually really good. So I have to agree with you that looks pretty good. But my 5th place is going to be Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. And that's only because this is the remaster, only because I didn't really play it when it came out. And I know that it's going to have some online functionality. So I'm looking forward to being able to play this with other people. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it for that reason. But I kind of cut you off there. Did you have something else you wanted to say about the Trials of Mana, or did you want to just go ahead and go into your 4th pick?
The only reason Trials of Mana for me is not a little bit higher on this list is because there's no multiplayer like the original.
Mm-hmm.
It's single player only, but I understand why. It's just kind of a little bit of a bummer because it's in 3D and you have full control of the camera view, right? And so if you're going to have 2 players and still have it in 3D, then you kind of have to compromise for that second player. They either have to have no control over the camera and always have to be on the screen with player 1, or what are you going to do? You're going to do a split screen to keep it local, that like local co-op. That's kind of awkward, right? Or
they could have figured it out.
Maybe, yeah, but that's why it's only number 5.
I got you.
My number 4 game is the same as your number 5, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remaster. I played that game with a group of friends back when it came out on the GameCube, and it was both good and bad because, the story back then was that because of Final Fantasy VII and its runaway success, and there was like a falling out between Squaresoft at the time and Nintendo when they jumped ship and went to PlayStation, and all of a sudden the PlayStation was a huge bestseller in part because of Final Fantasy VII. So it had been a long time since there was a Final Fantasy game on a Nintendo console, basically. Yeah. I don't think Squaresoft released any games for the Nintendo 64.
I don't think so at all. No. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know that famously when they said that Final Fantasy VII was not coming to the Nintendo 64 because, you know, Nintendo screwed them over with
the cartridge.
yeah, they promised they were going to develop CD based games and
Mm.
they went cartridge. And Square had already invested so much money in the Nintendo PlayStation.
Yeah.
Um,
So we thought that Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, we thought like, oh, this is like a
a
offshoot.
return.
Well, this is like a branch, and they're going to continue, Final Fantasy 10, 11, 12 at the time, on PlayStation. But this is going to be Crystal Chronicles 1, and the Crystal Chronicles series is going to be just as high quality, like just as good storytelling, just as good characters as the original, but it'll be on the Nintendo consoles.
And it was.
That's what we
No.
that's what we thought at the time. Um, the story and character development is not quite there, right? As a
Yeah.
like a mainline Final Fantasy game.
Right.
It more plays like a if you're familiar with like Gauntlet Legends
Mm.
style of game,
Yeah, it's kind of a
where like a
dungeon
top
crawler.
down. Yeah, yeah. It's more like that, but multiplayer. And so once we got over the like our too high of expectations for the game, and
Yeah.
then once we got over the inconvenience of having to plug in the Game Boy Advances all the time just
Yeah.
so that everybody could play, we had a blast with it. So,
Dude, that reminds me. It was a really funny story, but uh, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and one of the podcasts I occasionally listen to is the Game Informer podcast. I think they do a really good job, even after some of the firings. And I know they kind of a lot of the people that got fired from Game Informer started their own
mhm.
podcast, MinMax. But um, they were talking about this, I think, in the last podcast. And I wish I could remember his name, but it's one of the older guys that's been with the company a long time. And he was so mad about Crystal Chronicles. He was like, dude, like I called off work. Like I had all my friends were coming over. Like we had bought all this soda and like all this like food to eat. Like we were just gonna be like jamming it up on the next big Final Fantasy release. And then like we played it for like 20 minutes and we were like, this is boring. Like now, like that's because they expected it to be, like
Yeah,
Final Fantasy X or something. So
I think I don't know if it was just people or just rumors or like if back then the gaming magazines were really like kind of pushing that narrative,
yeah,
but there was an idea out there that like Crystal Chronicles is going to be like just as good narratively as like Final Fantasy X, but it's just going to be this is going to be Nintendo's version of
well that's
Final Fantasy moving forward.
that's back when Square actually had like weight behind the name, right? Like,
Yeah.
like that's back when like Square actually put out like really great games like every
Mhm.
time, you know. So like if Square was putting another Final Fantasy game out, like this is back when they did not like beat a dead horse with all these like spin-offs and like
Right.
the branching out the Final Fantasy VII story and everything. Like like because Sakaguchi did not like sequels. He did not like spin-off games. Like they
Mhm.
did them like rarely, but like usually they didn't do them right. So the fact that this game Crystal Chronicles like like this is going to be a Final Fantasy game. This is they don't do this to this is their flagship property. It's going to be pretty good. But
Right.
it's still, from what I understand, was still a good time. They're obviously remastering it, so a lot of people had fun with the multiplayer aspect, and I think
Mhm.
that's probably we're on agreement here that that's the thing we're looking forward to. So,
For sure.
for sure, yeah. Crosscode on Switch. I'm looking forward to that. It was supposed to come out on Switch last year, and they're porting it from PC, and they just couldn't get it done. They ran into some issues, basically because the game was coded on PC in I can't remember the language, but basically you could play it in a browser, right? So if you go to like Crosscode, if you go to their website, you can actually play a free version of the game up to a certain point just in your browser. Like you don't even have to download the game. And like that's a really cool idea that you could have a game like this expansive, just play in your browser. I think that's really cool. But it became a problem because I think it was HTML5 because porting that to consoles, apparently that introduces all sorts of security risks with the hardware
Mm.
and consoles like Sony and, Nintendo, where they were like, you're not putting it on our console in HTML5. It's just not going to happen. So they've had to like they have a company that's porting it, and they've said like it's been a long process of them, like getting another interpreter to interpret the HTML5,
Mm.
which causes it to slow down because it's having to read everything. And Crosscode's a very buttery smooth pixel art action game with a lot of characters. So um, I have it on PC. I haven't beaten it on PC just because once I got it on PC, I heard there was going to be a Switch version, or there may be a Switch version in the future, and then it was announced. So I've been kind of holding off for that, and they said it's definitely coming out in 2020. So I'm really looking forward to it because I think on Switch, assuming they're able to resolve the performance issues because of the, translating the code there, and it sounds like they are. Like they said, they solved it on the Xbox. They now have to just figure it out on the PlayStation and Switch. But I think it's going to be awesome. Like that's just like that game is just designed for the Switch. It's got like just such a great pixel art style. Like it's unique to its own style. It's not like Hyper Light Drifter. It's not Octopath Traveler. It's not Final Fantasy VI. It's it's not the Saga games or Chrono Trigger. It's like its own unique style of just awesome. Like just I don't know how else to say it. Like if you have not checked out Crosscode, you got to go check it out. And so I'm looking forward to it on Switch. So that's
Yeah,
that's my number 4. Where
it's a
you
good
at?
pick.
Where you at with number 3?
Now I'm thinking about it. Maybe Crosscode should be on my list, but I didn't think of it at the time, so uh, that'll be a honorable mention for me. Um, I've seen some of that game, and it looks really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it would play
definitely,
great on Switch.
definitely recommend it. I still listen to the soundtrack at least once a week, so
Oh, nice.
it's got great music too. Where are you at with number 3 though?
Number 3 for me is Tales of Arise. I'm looking forward to the game and seeing how it's going to be different, seeing how, because they're kind of pitching it as it's going to really shake up the Tales formula and be different.
Dude,
And it's kind of the first one that will be for PS4 hardware in mind. Tales of Berseria is on PS4 as well, but back in Japan, I know for sure in Japan. I'm not sure about North America, but it had a PS3 release as well.
yeah,
But this is really the first one they're trying to put on the current generation consoles right before the right before they're no longer current generation.
sure. This
So
this game
yeah,
looks like I've talked at length about, my various feelings with the Tales games, and it's usually pretty hit or miss from what I've played.
mhm.
But this game is just I don't know, it's just striking a chord with me because like from the art style aesthetic, like I'm totally digging it. Like the main protagonist is like an adult man and an
Yeah.
adult woman. Like, woo, it's not like a little kid that's like going into combat. Like it's like an actual, it screams to me like what JRPGs used to be back in the 90s. Like it just I don't know, for me it gives me that vibe. And
but
then
still, but still in that Tales style to it.
yeah, it's still a Tales game for sure. But
Mhm,
like you pointed out too, it's also actually made for the PS4.
mhm.
Tales of Berseria, that was a PS3 game that we played on the PS4, And I
Yeah.
like Tales of Berseria for various reasons, but this game is actually made for the PS4, so it looks really, really good. It looks really, really polished. And on top of that, like the story sounds like fascinating with, the fact that like there's this uprising and these people that are being taken advantage of. They're basically slaves and they're like revolting against their masters and everything like that. And like, it's
Mhm.
just, I don't know, between that and then like looking at the guy and he has like a steel plate over like the left side of his face. And I'm like, why? I already want to know, why do you have that steel plate on your face? Like,
The Man in the
why?
Iron Mask, right?
Yeah, I don't care. I'm in. I'm in. I'm buying the game so I can find out why he has that like thing on his face. Like it I want to know, dude. Like there's something about this that just tells me like they're trying to take the story up to another level because like if you saw in Berseria, if you played Berseria, Like that story and that game was excellent. That was a great story in that game, Tales of
Mm,
Berseria. And it told me that like, oh, they're trying to like step up their game here because they really
mhm,
put a lot of effort into that. So I think that they're following that same direction with Tales of Arise. And I think this one is also going to have an excellent story. But it seems like this time around, they're also focusing more on the combat. Like we're still waiting to like get total details with that. But from everything that I've seen, it seems like they're putting more effort into the combat. And that's one area where Berseria kind of lacked with me. The prior game was the gameplay was a little dodgy sometimes. So
mm.
if they could have really good story and really good gameplay, like, dude, we're talking about a great game, like a really good game. So I'm really excited. That's my number 3, by the way. Also,
Yeah, it has a lot of potential for sure. For me, the last Tales game I played was Zestiria, and the one I played before that was Tales of Xillia 2.
oh man, you're just getting like the double whammy of bad games.
Yeah, so the last two Tales games I played in a row, I actually think were maybe the two worst that I've played. And I played several of them. I played Symphonia and Abyss. I haven't played Vesperia yet. And then I played Xillia, which I thought was not great, but it was all right. And then Xillia 2, I actively didn't like it.
Yeah,
And then Zestiria was not only bad, it was boring. It bored me on top of being bad. So I thought, let's pump the brakes a little bit. And so I didn't get Berseria when it came out. And then I've just been so busy with other games that I haven't had a chance to play it yet. But I really should try and sit down and play it before Arise comes out, just so that I'm
let me
up to date on all these Tales games.
let me say this. Okay, I when I got Berseria, I liked the story a lot. But like the gameplay, like I was just mashing buttons on like hard mode,
You're
like right,
winning.
and I was just winning, and I had no idea what I was doing, just like woo, just pressing all these buttons, just one right. I took that and same strategy when I picked up Tales of Vesperia remastered on the Switch. I took that same strategy and tried to apply it, and you can see it on this channel. Like I streamed like my first time ever playing this game. I lost the tutorial fight.
It
Like
didn't work. Huh?
no, dude, there was the first boss, dude. Like I was on stream. It took me like 11 times.
Mm,
Like, dude, like that game, like the Tales like gameplay is really good when they do it right. But I think that it's also really difficult for newer players. So I think that they kind of tried experimenting with simplifying it a little bit. And I think that they're seeing the writing on the wall here. No, we got to have a
mhm.
good story and we have to have good gameplay. So I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it. What's your?
same.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have anything else to say before getting into your number 2?
Oh no, I just said same for me.
Cool. What's your number
Hope it
2?
has a lot of potential. My number two is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition on the Switch.
You are a gentleman. That's one of my honorable mentions. But go ahead and expand upon that. Why is it your number 2?
I just love the original game so much,
Mm-hmm.
and I played Xenoblade Chronicles X, and that game has like some positive and negatives. It's kind of a mixed bag for me.
Yeah.
And then Xenoblade Chronicles 2, based on the previews I saw for it, I thought looked really exciting. But I didn't have a Switch at the time. It was always a when I get a Switch, I'll eventually play that game.
Mm,
But then some of the some of its issues I became aware of, and then I decided, I just don't really want to play that game anymore. And
sure.
then they announced Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, coming back on the Switch, and that's just great. I mean, I love that game so much.
Yeah.
Like I played through that game twice when it was on the Wii, and yeah,
It's an
it's one of those games for me that's just like if I really, hmm, I haven't really thought about what I'm going to say here. I just love the game.
yeah, it's one of those games that when I played it, I emulated it on the Wii. and we did me and Eric did a discussion on the game back when our podcast was still kind of new. So I tried to listen to that discussion recently, and I was like, oh, some of my thoughts on this were kind of not fully developed, but um, I
Well,
really liked it.
it is a very long game.
Yeah,
Like, and if people think that it's too dragged out, I can totally understand that criticism of the game. And also, there is a lot of kind of min
padding.
maxing with the equipment,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because the enemies just dump equipment on you, right? And then it's like if you're really trying to play optimally, you're constantly going into the menu and being like, "Oh, I got this new weapon. It's better than the weapon I just got 10 minutes ago,"
But it's only
to
like
equip it.
4% better. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the gem slot system where you're like trying to increase your stats and different effects through the slots. So it is very kind of min maxy, but it's definitely not grindy, I don't think. Like,
That game though, for me, was just like when I got done playing that, I was thinking to myself, like the first thought that came to my mind was they don't make games like that every day. Like
no.
that was a good game for like I was really impressed.
Yeah,
It does have some issues like you brought up, but like man, there is so much just heart put into that game
for
and
sure.
just like detail and just like it's truly an amazing game. I think the only reason like I put it as an honorable mention and the only reason it didn't like hit the top 5 is because I'm unfortunately one of those people that are kind of turned off by the new art direction. I realize a lot of people like it, and that's totally fine. And
Hmm.
so I'm kind of little on the side, like I kind of want to see more of this. I want to see where it's going. And the new art direction is part of the problem, but I think after I've thought about it some more, that's not necessarily the full thing. I think I would have been fine even if it was just the new art style. But um, I don't know, man. Like Shulk, they made him look a lot younger, and like I just to me
I mean,
when I compare that model to the older model or the older model, I meant the older version, right?
mhm.
He just looks a lot younger, and it's just there's something about it that just doesn't feel right to me. But it might be because I'm so used to playing the original that I just need to spend time with it, you know. Because sometimes when you take a different stylistic choice, it's it can feel like it may feel like something's wrong because you're so used to it being one way, right? Like
Right.
like when you hear Enter Sandman played in like country style, right? Or like you're like, this isn't a Metallica song, and you're like, this
True.
doesn't sound right at all, But after like you play it to somebody that has never heard Enter Sandman before, they're like, man, this is pretty catchy. Like, it's just it's just like you have to, I think like I just need to sit with it a little bit. But
Yeah.
as of right now, I'm like, I don't know about this, but I'm gonna sit with it. I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna try it out, and we'll see. I am disappointed though that they are not just remastering the original version because there's no real good way to play the game if you're not emulating it because you could play it on the Wii, but the Wii's not HD. I played it in
Hmm.
HD on my PC and it looked freaking amazing. And so it's disappointing that you have to play it on the Wii and I guess you could play it on the Wii U and that's got an HDMI port, but it's still not upscaled. Like it's not like I know
Yeah,
they
it's not natively HD.
right and like
Yeah.
they have it on the 3DS, which I guess that's an option. But dude, that's a handheld. I want to play it on a
Tiny
handheld.
tiny screen. Yeah.
Yeah, like I want
That game deserves big screen. You got to get to the top of the mountain peak or wherever you are and scan the horizon.
to. Yeah.
That's one of the best parts.
So it would have been cool if they had released that version early, like and just remastered and been like, hey, buy it $30 or and then Nintendo they would have been like $60, and then oh yeah, by the way, we're remaking it too. I mean, I don't know if that would have been a good business strategy, but I would have preferred that. Then I think it would have been a little bit more open because I would have had the option to, play it the way I want to play it. But I'm gonna hold out and I'm gonna buy it and we're gonna see because I don't know, maybe after 2 or 3 hours I might just get used to it and be like, you know what, this looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think there'll be good things and bad things about the definitive edition. Like we know they're adding a new area, like a whole new map that was cut from the original game. But that could be a good or a bad thing, right? Because what if they add uh, what if the content they add in that area is not really worthwhile, right? It depends what kind of effort they put into that.
Well, and is it optional? Because if it's optional and it's not worthwhile, then I feel like you can just,
Yeah,
skip
but
it.
we'll see. And maybe the new character models, like you said, maybe that you'll get more used to them. Maybe they'll have some kind of some advantages too. Maybe like the characters will be able to be a little more expressive, like in the facial animation, because
Right.
that was very limited back in the on the Wii. That wasn't really a focus of
Hmm.
the original game. It was more so about the environments, like getting the environments to be as big and impressive as they could on the system.
See,
So,
I'm kind of a nutcase though, because part of the excitement for me sometimes is seeing a game that pushed the boundaries on the hardware that it was on, right? So
mhm.
a lot of times I might look at like Final Fantasy 12, for example, and I'll just get excited because I'm like playing it like, man, this looks so good. It doesn't really look that good compared to like CyberPunk. No, it
No.
doesn't. It does not at all. But like
Yeah,
I'm in my head, like I'm like, dude, this looks amazing for the PlayStation 2, right? So
right.
I like that aspect of it, of just, this game really showed like what the Wii could do. And that like a lot of people like myself growing up, or I guess at that point, yeah, I was still growing up. I was a teenager. When the Wii was, yeah, I was like 16 or 17, I think. But when the Wii was out, like I didn't really show it any love. I was like, that's what people are playing Wii bowling. Like, I'm not
Right.
buying that. Like, I'm a real gamer. I'm not Wii bowling. Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So, uh, you know, like I didn't really give it a chance, and now I'm looking at it like, dude, this game, like, dude, they showed the Wii was like a serious console to me, anyways. I know there's a lot of other good games, but for me personally, like when I played that, I was like, wow, like I totally overlooked a great system here. Like this really had a lot of opportunity. So it's kind of like when you remake it, and you're just like I'm like, I'm kind of like missing out on that, And but I realize not everyone wants that experience too. Some people just want, the latest and greatest. So I get that too. But anyways, that was a long tangent. So that was your number two. My
Yes.
number two is Cyberpunk 2077. And I think mainly because I've gotten really into Witcher 3,
Hmm.
that it's just such a phenomenal game. And, I can get into like all the reasons why I liked Witcher 3. I've talked about it before, but I think it's just a superb game. And I want to support CD Projekt Red. I'm excited about what they have in store for the future. I think they really know how to make a Western styled RPG because, a lot of times when I play Western games, I just get turned off by all these dialogue trees and just like I'm going to make a bad decision and like it just ruins my whole game. And like, I don't know, like CD Projekt Red, they were able to take that philosophy of, hey, you get to choose, but they're able to incorporate it into like the gameplay where it enhances the story, right? And so it kind
Hmm.
of got me turned back on to Western games like, oh, this is how you do it. Like one of the early examples in Witcher 3 that's not really a spoiler. It's kind of a spoiler, but not to the main narrative. It's just a random side quest that you do in the first 20 minutes of the game. But if you remember, you come across this dwarf character who's a blacksmith in one of the first villages, and he's like cursing up a storm because somebody burnt down his house. And he's like, you go up and talk to him. He's like, I've lived here for 25 years. And these people, like, somebody burnt my house down. And he's talking about how they're racist and everything like that. And he's like, dude, can you please find this person who burnt down my house? So I'm like, okay, yeah. I find the kid or the guy that burnt down this dwarf's house. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is an RPG. I'm gonna take the guy over to the dwarf, and then the dwarf's gonna be like, I watched you grow up, and then like, okay, well that's it. I'll forgive you, but you gotta like pick the weeds out of my yard for the next year or something like. Like, so I bring the guy over, like, and he's like, okay, I turn him in, and I had the option. I could have just let him go, but I turned
Hmm.
him into the dwarf thinking like, okay, this is the right thing to do. This is what the game wants me to do. And the dwarf's like, F it. And he calls the guard, and the guard comes over and he's like, let's effing hang him right now. And I'm like, no, don't hang him. Like, Jesus Christ. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh my God. Like, what did I do? Like, and like, like I was like, Geralt was like, the town's not going to like you now. And he's like, F them. They burnt my house down. Like, these racist SOBs. And I was just like, dude, this game's so gritty. Like, but like, I was just like, that was such a good like enhancement of the philosophy of The Witcher where like sometimes it's better if you just don't choose because you don't know how, what's good and what's evil. You don't know what's going to happen, right? And
Hmm.
so, just like the way they were able to incorporate that, where like that was satisfying in a way, but not really, but just very memorable. Like the fact that they're taking that and they're applying it to like a sci-fi element and like science fiction, like futuristic stuff is really like my jam. So
Mm.
they're taking that philosophy and that expertise and they're applying it to a futuristic world. Like, dude, I'm totally in. And just like everything I've seen of this game, it looks to be really good. So I'm really hoping they can knock it out of the park here. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game.
Yeah, for me, like I mentioned earlier in the show, that was on my list, but it got knocked off into honorable mention territory now because, well, number one, I haven't played The Witcher 3 still. Um, so I'm missing some of the magic, and I
Yeah.
know I'm missing out. This can't go on much longer. I'm gonna have to play that game. But there's just so many other games, that I need to play. Um, so it's kind of hard to prioritize, but definitely need to play that game. And then number two, it got delayed so close to the release of the new consoles. I'm thinking about, you know, pushing it off just a little bit further to play.
On the
You
PlayStation
never
5.
know if there's going to be like a PS5 director's cut version of it or whatever, like enhanced version of some kind. You never know. So I have to wait a little bit longer to see
That is really
because of that.
tempting. Yeah.
Yeah, it got bumped off my list because of that. But
Very, very understandable.
I do love Cyberpunk as well. Um, I played what was it called? Deus Ex game on PS3, the Deus Ex Human Revolution, which has a very similar
Aesthetic.
vibe to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like the setting. Yeah, it's like you know, people have cybernetic enhancements, and the game is kind of the story is like a commentary on like how would that come about, and if it happened, like how would society move on? Because you today we have technology is getting better with prosthetic limbs and stuff, but what if someday a proth- prosthetic limb was just better, right? What if it was just better than your arm could ever hope to be? And so it's like, yeah, why not get a a robot arm or something? Like it
It,
seems crazy now, but that could be the future. And so it's science fiction is very interesting like that, where they ask,
explore.
yeah, like ask what ifs and then try and piece together like what the future might look like if that scenario came true.
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting idea because in the trailers and the gameplay that they showed, like this world has like totally embraced it. Like you're pointing out, like not
Hmm.
just like a little bit, not like, you know, like a, what was that like Minority Report with Tom Cruise where like it's like kind of like it like embraced but not really like no, this is like total like people have like they're basically like 60% robot like totally in on it.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool vibe, and I love the fact that like all the artwork and stuff feels very 1980s. I don't know
Hmm.
why that just clicks with me, but like that's just that's just like such a genius like aesthetic to go for. And
Yeah.
but it's also like kind of has this gritty element of like or grimy element of the Matrix. And growing
Hmm.
up, I was a huge Matrix fan, and this idea that
Oh
there's
yeah.
these like abandoned like buildings that people are walking down the hallways and they're like trench coats and stuff. and like and it's like low lighting. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
got that element too. And then like once they announced Keanu Reeves was going to be in it too, and Keanu Reeves was in the Matrix, I'm just like, dude, like you got me on all these fronts. Witcher
Yeah.
3, you got like sci-fi, it's the 80s vibe, Matrix vibe, and you have Keanu Reeves in it. Like, come on. Like, I'm buying this. I'm buying it. So
Yeah,
um
I think it's going to be awesome.
yeah, for sure. What's your like I think we process of elimination, guys. I think what did you pick for number one, Stan? I probably picked the same.
Number one, I have Final Fantasy VII Remake, of course.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Why
The
why, why is this your number one pick above them all?
It's the remake of my favorite game of all time, my favorite story period of all time. Uh, yeah, Final Fantasy VII. I know that it's not going to be the same experience, right? Because nostalgia is a powerful drug, but so is like being rational and looking at things objectively.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm interested to see how they do it, and with all the information we already know. I mean, they completely changed the combat system. The game's going to have voice acting in it where previously it did not. So now, instead of the voices or maybe the way you thought the characters would interact with each other, it's going to be dictated to you now rather than imagined in your head, right?
Yeah.
And also, um, just various other changes, like we know Sephiroth is going to be a bigger part of the story in this first part of the game, whereas in the original he was not at all. So I'm kind of going into it looking at the changes they're going to make and trying not to be too critical of like, but in the original it was like this, and now they changed it, and therefore that's not good because the original did it well. I'm trying to look at it as its own thing,
Right.
like a retelling. It'd be like if they went back and remade something else from the 90s, like Jurassic Park or something, right? You wouldn't want them to make it like shot for shot the same thing, right? With just different actors and all the same dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
You would want to see a different take on that story. And then you can compare the two and say, well, the original did this better, the new one did this better, and so on and so forth, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting because I was thinking about this the other day. Like it's hard for me to convey to like for example my aunt. She's a very casual gamer, very
Hmm.
last decade got into I think her first game that she really got into was Skyrim, right?
Yeah.
So, very recent. She's older than me, but she didn't play Final Fantasy VII in the 90s, you know? So, trying to convey to her why I'm excited about the 7 remake, like she can kind of get it, but not really because like as an example, and this is something that people like her just can't get. I was looking up Before Crisis, we talked about earlier, the cell phone game that's Before Crisis Core that only came out in Japan. And I was trying to look up a way to emulate it or play it. And I was seeing forum posts from like 2006, right? Where people are like, yeah, unfortunately, there's no way to play it. But I think that they should implement these stories in the remake. This is like 2006 and people are just like talking about the remake. Like, yeah, it's happening. Like, and like, dude, it's 2020. That was 14 freaking years ago. And people were talking about it on forums. Like, yeah, once they do the remake, I think they should incorporate this. Like it was any minute now, this game was going to come out. And
Right.
probably part of that was, the PS3 tech demo where they showed what the Final Fantasy 7 would look like if it was remade for Final Fantasy or remade for the PlayStation 3. But even before that, I was seeing that Square was talking about like re-releasing Final Fantasy VII on the PS2 with enhanced graphics, whatever that was supposed to mean. So,
Hmm.
like, dude, like they've been building on this for so freaking long. So, and like people didn't even think it was going to happen. Like there was all sorts of people saying, well, you know, how hard it would be for them to remake that game. It was 3 discs long, like, and cutting edge graphics. It would be, $1 billion to remake. Like they can't make games like that anymore, blah, blah, blah. And so, dude, seeing this trailer when it first got announced, I got chills, to be honest, because I couldn't believe it was happening, like that they are actually doing it. And I agree with you. It's a remake. They have to have the creative freedom to be able to tell the story in a way that's satisfying. And I do think it's kind of cool that they want this game to be good for players that have played the game before and people that are
Mhm.
coming to it new. And so if you can experience a story in a new way, I do think that's good. Um, but when you're remaking something that's really a classic, right? I'm a big music guy on the side and give you guys some insight into some of my other hobbies, right? And, if you're going to remake a song that's a classic, you need to at least, you have to be better than the original or at least be as good. And, you know, and sometimes it is better. Like All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix is a way better version of All
Oh,
Along the
yeah.
Watchtower than Bob Dylan's. And Bob
Mhm.
Dylan even said that. He said, "No, that's not my song. That's Jimmy's song." Because like it was just miles better, even though he covered the song, right? And so
Mhm.
you're remaking Final Fantasy VII. This is like a huge game. So I I think that I'm going to judge it and try to be open minded, like you said, and say, okay, they can change things. Let me see what they can do with it. I'll give them a pass with the freaking ghosts, the Genova
Right.
ghosts, even though that drives me nuts. But there's no reason not to like the Genova ghosts. They might set it up properly. So I'm going to go in with an open mind. But also, if it's not as good as the original game, I'm going to say that. you
Well,
know,
sure, yeah.
And I'm just gonna be like, no, the definitive way is to play the PS1 version. But I'm
I mean,
hoping that this is the new definitive way. I'm hoping.
I'm I'm honestly expecting the story and possibly the music to be better in the original, right? But
Hmm.
then I would suspect that surely by the improvement in technology, that everything else will be improved.
Yeah.
Although the materia system remains to be seen yet what they do with that, because that was a pretty in-depth system for the RPG, the PS1 RPG that came out at the time, all the different combinations you could do. And being a turn-based game kind of helped with that because the characters themselves were more limited, like in
Yeah.
what they could do,
Yeah.
and then like all your options came through the materia.
Well, and the other,
Whereas in this game, you have more in the action system. It looks like you have more options, materia aside. You can already do more combos and dodge roll and defend and everything, and like all these different attacks that are not even tied to the materia system. So we'll have to see how
well,
that turns out.
yeah, and it's kind of it looks everything I've seen with the gameplay, which was my biggest question mark for this game. Like I've been convinced. Like I think the gameplay, all in all, at least the battle system is really like they've done a really good job with it. So on that front, I think I'm very hopeful. But it is interesting that you bring up the materia because, in the original game, a lot of people criticize Final Fantasy VII because, you didn't have the classes like you did in Final Fantasy VI or especially Final Fantasy V, where, each character had their own unique fighting style. And Final Fantasy VII, it was kind of like a blank slate. Yeah,
Hmm.
like they had different animations and such, but generally speaking, you could swap equipment and you could swap materia and you could just make anybody like basically the same as anybody else.
Hmm.
And a lot of people didn't like that. But on the flip side, having that offered a lot of customization and just a lot of experimentation, which let people really, you know, try different things with the game and really give it a lot of life in that way. And it seems like with the remake, they're going more in the other direction with, okay, let's have people actually have more of a class system, not
Yep.
necessarily, like a Final Fantasy Tactics classes or something like that. But, it's a very clear, that Aerith is the healer and she's the healer. You're not gonna slap like all this like materia on her and like boost her attack power and have her summoning all these gods and stuff. I guess even in the base game, her main attack, the pole arm or whatever, was never that strong. But they're definitely going in that direction where, you have your melee fighter, you have your tank, you have your healer, and that just makes sense. It's an action style, so it's going to be interesting to see how that materia system feels with that different kind of design philosophy. But I think it's going to work well from what I've seen. So,
Yeah, I
anyways,
think so. Like you just said, it's kind of hard to reconcile those two things, right? Having like full customization over the characters, but at the same time, you want them all to feel different, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, so in an action style game, it makes sense that if they're going to have you swapping characters, you want them to actually feel like they're like you have to play differently, right? Like you can't play Tifa the same way you use Cloud
Or
or Barrett
Barrett,
or
yeah,
Eris. Yeah. So that just makes sense. But that's a change that some people won't like,
yeah.
right? And so
Well, it seems
who's to
like
say which is better? They're going to be different in their own ways.
it
I
seems
mean,
like they could offer that customization though, like within the characters themselves.
yeah, yeah.
So within
With
their
them,
own class, there could be a lot of customization.
hopefully so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's our top 5 most anticipated RPGs for 2020. I already mentioned an honorable mention of Xenoblade Remaster, and Stan's, I know, mentioned that Cyberpunk 2077 was one of his honorable mentions.
Hmm.
My only other honorable mention that I would point out is Bravely Default 2, just because I thought Bravely Default 1 was excellent. I didn't play Bravely Second, the sequel to Bravely Default. I don't know. The second one, I didn't play that
Yeah.
one. So, but I don't know. I'm excited to play Bravely Default 2, and I am looking forward to it, but I'm kind of like in the middle because the trailer that we saw, it seemed like the story was going to be a little bit generic again, and I'm not particularly happy about that, but I'm holding out hope that they can step it up a notch and apply some of the excellent gameplay and music and map design and just general aesthetic, but also bring in a really good story. So I'm excited to play it, but I'm still kind of on the fence. Like, okay, we'll see if it's going to be good. But I think you had another honorable mention as well, right?
Did I? Well,
East,
I should have had
East,
crosscode in there. Oh yeah, East 9. That's
yeah.
another honorable mention just because I haven't played East 8. I'm so far behind in all these games.
It's a
And
very,
I want to play 8 as well.
it's a very
So,
honorable of you to have given it a chance this time.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. Very cool. All right, we have our last topic here, a Discord question from Decoy Manta, who says, "What are your unpopular RPG opinions?" Initially, when I read this question, I thought it said, "What are your unpopular JRPG opinions?" And I was like, "Oh, I got this."
Mm.
And then so I started taking some notes to myself and like trashing JRPGs. And then like after I was done, I reread it and I was like, "Oh, RPG, like just RPGs in general." And I was like, "Oh, well, I don't want to erase everything I had." So I took some notes also for Western RPGs. So my answer might be a little in depth there, a little like competitive. But what did you have here? I'm kind of curious.
Well, first, I think we should caveat that these are our opinions, right? This is not like
These, these are
we're not about
facts.
to pass judgment on people who disagree or anything, like
Our opinion affects the Metacritic score. So
right. Um, well, I have a few things. You want to Should we just switch off? I'll give one, you give one like we just did.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing, and this is going to be controversial right out the gate, is I dislike grinding as an option to overcome challenge in RPGs. And I think that mostly applies to a lot of Japanese games, Japanese role playing, but it can apply to Western RPGs as well too, right? Where if you just go off and do side quests for 20 plus hours, all of a sudden like the main campaign is a joke. right?
Right.
I really don't like that. And the only issue is there's not a lot of ways to fix that issue without making the player feel like they're restricted in some way, right? If you put like a level cap on them, or if the enemies scale with you, then it kind of feels like, well, what's the point, right,
Right.
of leveling up? Um, because to me, like, and typically this is an issue like in the boss encounters, right? Because the story will build up the boss encounter as like something like really difficult for the character in the story, or the characters like the party is going to have to overcome, right? But if you're over leveled and it's a piece of cake, but then the characters in the story are still like, like, oh, we barely made it through that, then it's like there's a huge disconnect, right, between the player's experience
Yeah.
and what the story is trying to tell you. And since RPG, I'm typically in there for the story. I really don't like that as a as it like as an issue that these games have. And so typically what I do is I just play through the whole story as and veer off the side quests as little as possible. But then sometimes I miss out on a lot of good optional content by doing
Right.
that. I
Right.
think
You're
most of
kind
the
of
time
punished.
I end up avoiding a bunch of fetch quests that don't matter to me.
Hmm.
But
But that's changing. Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, I think that, with me on that topic, like I'm in the middle because I totally agree with you that it when a boss is supposed to feel like it's like this is a big deal, right? And then you go do it and you just beat it in like 5 hits because you're just so overpowered. It's not even a
yeah,
challenge. That is a criticism of the gameplay, I think. But there's a part of me that like sometimes I like grinding. Like I like the loop of it. I like going into the shop and being like, what's the most expensive armor and the most expensive sword I could buy? Okay, I'm equipping everyone with this stuff, and
yeah,
then I'll go put on a podcast or like something or music or whatever and just grind for like 3 hours or whatever. It's relaxing, it's fun, like, and I like outfit like my whole party with like the best I can possibly get, and like then there's so much satisfaction I get from just like wrecking the boss because I put in like hours of work into this. But at the same time, like it's not for everybody. And I think that one way they could counteract that is just giving people like in Dragon Quest 11, like they let you select your not just hard mode, normal mode. They give you like a breakdown of like different options you can choose. Like, do you want save points, or like
right.
or like do you want to be able to like recharge at the end, or do you want to have to like recharge like in other ways, like and it kind of gives like your you're getting to choose how you want to play the game. And, that way, if people like me that just want to grind, I can do that. Or if you just want a story mode, you should be able to choose that. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I agree with you. They should address that, or RPGs could address that more, I guess, in keeping with the topic. But
I think usually when the game designers come into this issue, they do something like once you get to a certain level, then all of a sudden the enemies in the area give you like 1 XP or like terrible XP, right? Where it gets to the point where if you want to gain another level, you're going to be there for hours just to gain that one more level. They're kind of like
right,
trying to push you, like tell you, like, go on, move on. This area is no, not important to you anymore. But then there's other games like FF13. They just totally cap you, right? They say
which
like, no, you need to be able to get through this chapter, this upcoming boss fight, with the stats that you have and the abilities that you have, and that's because they were very heavy-handed in trying to, um,
force you to play the game the way
yeah,
they
they were
want.
trying to teach you like, no, you now have access to the saboteur role, and the saboteur, we're only going to give you these three abilities, and you need those three to overcome this boss, and you need to figure it out, or you don't get to go on.
Yeah,
you know, part of me really likes that because they're actually trying to teach you the mechanics of the battle system in the same way that a Zelda dungeon like tries to teach you about the different equipment, right? In a Zelda dungeon, you end up in a room and you need to get the key, or you need to get through that door and the door is locked or whatever. But there's some kind of puzzle in the room that you're going to have to make use of the tool that you just got, right?
Right.
And I kind of feel like a lot of boss battles in JRPGs are designed in a similar way. However, they can be overcome by, like, if you
Just
don't get it, right, well, you can spend like 3 or 4 hours grinding in the dungeon or outside the dungeon,
and just
get
wreck.
that awesome equipment, and just go in and not even figuring out the boss's weakness or
Yeah.
like what skills are useful against this type of enemy,
Well,
and that's the part I don't like about it, is that it can be used as a means to overcome something that's more difficult. It'd be like, in like, to further the Zelda analogy, it'd be kind of like if you didn't understand that you had to use the mirror shield, right, and like deflect the light onto this switch that will open the door. If you just didn't get it, imagine if you could just go up to the locked door and just like slash it for 2 hours and it opened. Like that would be, we would say that's not good game design, right?
right,
If you
right,
could do
right,
that.
right, right. Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Like,
Well, I
I
think,
wish there
yeah.
I wish there was a way that you could do the grinding and you could get that satisfactory, um that feeling you get, like, right when your characters are getting stronger, but then also still have it always be a challenge at certain points, like certain checks where it's like it's not enough to just be strong. You also need to kind of have some knowledge of the game, right, to
Well,
get better at this point.
one. I'll bring up an
That
example here. So, like Dragon Quest V, for example, I noticed because we also did a discussion on that. Me and Eric back in the day here, and one thing I brought up in that discussion that I still remember was that the game was very well balanced. And so, for example, one way they did that was whenever you went to the shop, there was all sorts of swords and shields you could buy. And, my usual go to philosophy in a lot of JRPGs was whatever's the most expensive is going to be the best.
hmm
And in Dragon Quest V, that's not the case. I mean, sometimes it might be the best, but, that sword or that shield is also fire based, right? And the boss you're coming up on, he's ice based. That's a terrible shield to use, right? But you just spent but I would be like, oh, it's the most expensive one. It's got like the most increase to my defense. And then I would go battle the boss and like I would just get freaking destroyed, right?
hmm
And I just grinded to buy this freaking shield that costs 10,000. And these battles are getting me like 100 gold or whatever. So like it took a while. I'm just getting destroyed, right? And like there was a lot, like all different nuanced gameplay tweaks like that, where I had to actually put thought into, you know, like what kind of boss is this going to be? What kind of enemies am I fighting right now? Should I get a variety of equipment? Well, maybe this might be a good sword to use occasionally because it'll let you trade sword out in combat. So a regular sword might be better for this boss, but the sword that's fire based might be better for certain enemies, right? So like there's a lot of like, yeah, you can wreck the game, but you have to learn the game too. And I think that
hmm
that's really like how they can meet that, play both sides of the field there where, yeah, you can grind and beat the boss, but you also have to know the game as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, like, this is my opinion, right? I'm not like saying this is something that should happen. I'm not saying that all JRPGs are bad if they allow you to grind and overcome the bosses or whatever,
Yeah.
I would hesitate to say though, like, or like, if there was a game that came out in the future where like some of the bosses like scaled with you and there was really like a solution, like a puzzle, like certain abilities you're supposed to use or a certain strategy, hopefully more than one strategy, that you can use to defeat this boss. You can't just rely on your stats or your strength or your great equipment. I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, that's bad game design because they did that, because they've taken away the choice, right, of players to just grind through the challenge.
Right.
That's that's basically where I'm coming from. I'm not saying that older games or games that allow you to do this, because it's most of them, are
That,
bad,
that's
right? I
what
mean,
I'm hearing. I mean,
no, like Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game, right? But like you can very easily get overpowered in that game without much effort. Basically,
Yeah.
you could argue that you're overpowered already from the very start
The,
in
que-
that game.
sometimes it's the question though of, are you overpowered because you've played so many JRPGs and you've played this game so many times, or is it, is it just the way the game's designed? Because I
Mhm.
remember playing Final Fantasy VII as a kid, and I didn't have as much experience with RPGs like I do now.
Right.
And I would use the same sword for like 3 towns,
Mhm.
like no, not upgrading, right? Because I was just like, oh, I just want to continue the story. Like, and it didn't occur to me like, no, if you want to play, this is how you play JRPGs. You upgrade your equipment every opportunity. If you don't do that, you're gonna get destroyed, right?
You're
And
just
so
making it harder for yourself. Yeah.
yeah, and I would use like the same armor from on like Aerith from like Midgar, and I'm like in Junon, it's like, and I would just be like really struggling with certain bosses, and it's because I didn't know how to play the game, right? But because
Yeah.
I learned how to play the game, and it became easier. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, like it's the same can be said for someone who plays Dark Souls games all day. Like they might come to play other action games and feel like it's too easy, whereas other people are maybe not the same expertise. So I guess
Hmm.
they got to play both sides of the field there. Um, I kind of did like a JRPGs things I didn't like, and then Western RPGs things I didn't like. So I don't know. Do you want to just keep going with your things, and then I'll just go into my things, because it might be kind of seem like I'm just trashing JRPGs
Okay.
if,
Sure.
if I don't like give that contrast.
All right. Well, so my second one, and this may be even more unpopular than the first, so prepare yourselves. Um, I think that uh, freedom or choice in RPGs is often detrimental to my immersion in the story,
Stan,
and so
you don't like freedom?
sometimes I'm against freedom. Yeah, just they're just going to clip just that, right?
That's
And then just
that's that's not very American of you. I mean, all right, all right. Tell us
yeah.
why this is detrimental to the immersion in the story.
So a lot of times the story sets up a situation that has to be dealt with immediately, right?
Okay.
Or it's implied that it's of the utmost importance
Mm-hmm.
to go to this location very quickly. But the game is too afraid, or for whatever reason, to kind of hands off, or to force you down a certain path, right? So a good example of this is my favorite game, FF7. There's a giant meteor in the sky, right, coming down, and like
Yeah.
Doom is is upon us, and you can go ride chocobos in the gold saucer for 20 hours.
Like, come on,
It's
Cloud. We got some other priorities here.
yeah, like it's dumb. I don't like it. I don't know what else to say about that. Like that's an extreme example. Um, Another one is Final Fantasy 15, right, where the character Noctis, right, in the story
Hmm.
should want to go get the ring from Luna as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Like that is his task. Like a certain event happens earlier on, right? And once that happens, finding Luna should be priority number one. Nothing should take precedent over that. But the game allows you to, go camping and fishing and in the woods for dozens and dozens of hours. And not only does it allow you to, like it encourages you to, because there's a lot of gameplay reward for doing that, right?
Little cutscenes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like and learning new recipes, right? And all the different stuff you can do, because it kind of wants to have it both ways. It wants to like give the player the total freedom to play the game how they want, but then also have a story that's like,
Very linear.
yeah, linear, and the character should want to do only one thing, right? The character only wants to do one thing, but the player might want to do 30 things.
That was one of the
So
biggest criticisms with the game too, was that the first half was so open and the second half was so linear, because I mean, it got to the point with that story where Square was like, okay, this can't continue to be open. Like it has to be linear. And a lot of people, were mixed on that. They were like, well, like I like the
Hmm.
open world, or like, or people that like me that were like, well, no, this should have been more linear the whole time. It was much better in the second half. So,
Yeah, or
yeah.
at least structure the story in such a different way so that as soon as that key event happens, that would be the end of the open world section. Like from that point forward, there's no purpose for the um, there's no purpose for the character in the story to still be going around camping, right? So take away the player's freedom to enhance the story.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And that can be those are two extreme examples, but there's also like little things like why can't I change this character's class? Like why are they locked as an archer or a paladin or whatever, right? Well, the game may not have a class system because the classes are like part of the story, right? Like
Hmm.
if you think like Final Fantasy IV, right? That game has like a locked class
Class.
system. Every character has a different class, but they can't change class. They learn abilities like in a very linear fashion, but the story doesn't work if Rydia is not a summoner,
Right.
right?
Right.
Final
Right.
Fantasy X doesn't work if
Yuna's not a summoner.
Yuna's not a summoner, or like I don't know, Titus is a powerhouse or something. Like it, it gives a different context to the characters, right? Like,
So I think what you're saying is in this example, um, having the gameplay locked like that makes the gameplay, not as enjoyable in certain circumstances as it could be,
mhm.
but it does enhance the story more, or it can.
It
So it's
can
kind
if
of
it's done well. I mean, I'm
right.
sure there are cases where it's just arbitrarily this character is whatever an archer, and the fact
I
that they're an archer doesn't really affect anything in the story, and so then yes, it can feel like limiting and like this is dumb, like or this is not a very interesting character progression system. But yeah,
well,
like
I think I see what you're saying. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard to know though, because would Final Fantasy VIII have worked as it did if, you know, Squall and Cypher didn't have this like arch rivalry as the two gunblades?
yeah,
Or could Yuna have had a blitzball instead, and like she just been chosen to travel and like pray, and like she could summon, but she wasn't a summoner. I mean,
hmm,
maybe it would have worked. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of Cecil and Final Fantasy IV, like you brought up, with him being a dark knight and then him shedding that darkness and going to a paladin. I
yeah.
mean,
It's
it can be done in a way where it's very satisfying.
yeah. In that case, it's part of the character's arc, so it doesn't make any sense for like you to randomly be able to like whatever teach black magic right to the paladin. That would go against everything that
Yeah,
the character's about, right? Like that wouldn't make sense in context of the setting or the character. So you just
yeah,
don't do it. So like that's a case where they've restricted your freedom or your choice, right, to play the game how you want, but it's because it's to serve the story essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's very interesting, and if they veer one way or the other too much, I think that's where it starts to hurt things.
Hmm.
It has to be balanced. Um, yeah, very good thoughts. So I'll just go ahead and because we're getting kind of can't believe
Yeah.
we've talked this
I had
long.
a third
Go.
one, but I think I kind of worked it into the second one already.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was gonna
So
say it seemed like that was kind
it's
of the
pretty
direction you
similar.
went. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and give my thoughts here on where I want to take, or my thoughts on this question. So these are unpopular RPG opinions. So this is literally like Decoy Manta's asking us to like step in the crap, right? Like,
Yep.
like, so just keep that in mind here, right? So initially, I thought this was unpopular JRPG opinions, and so I came up with like complaints about JRPGs, and I realized it was just RPGs. So then I went back and was like, instead of just like redoing my thought process, I was like, let me just come up with a few points for Western RPGs also. So I'll just kind of bounce back and forth on this, but Um, I love JRPGs, but the super young characters, like we had Ico and Final Fantasy IX and those type of characters, like it just breaks the fourth wall for me and it breaks my immersion. There's no reason we need like an 8-year-old to go into combat. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's stupid. It most of the time it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense, and I don't like it. Now Ico, I brought up in Final Fantasy IX. I don't know if that's the best example because that character won me over by the end of the game because I feel like she added a lot to the story, but I would have been fine if she was like 15 or something instead, or 18 or something like that. Um, so super young characters, and that kind of ties into my next thing, which RPGs being 12-year-olds and bikinis. Like that, I don't know why that's become popular, but it's a lot of times these girls seem way too young, and like they have this like huge cleavage, and like they're scantily clad, and they seem like they're like 11, So it's just like, oh, like I don't know, like I feel kind of creepy watching this. That isn't all JRPGs, but if I had to think of unpopular RPG opinions, that would probably be an unpopular one that I have that I don't particularly like that. And I'll just keep going with the JRPG stuff, and then I'll go into the Western stuff. Um,
Mhm.
Waifu culture has kind of like permeated over to like modern JRPGs where I don't think it really helps it. Like it was really
Mm-mm.
weird in Fire Emblem Three Houses. And apparently some of the other games also incorporated this a little bit earlier, but I was just like, this is strange. Like I'm going to war. Like I don't know. It felt really weird to me. And I still really like that game. I picked that for my game of the year last year, RPG of the year. So it's not like I hated that game, but I'm seeing that kind of direction more than I would have liked. And so that's something I don't like about JRPGs. And then the last thing with JRPGs would be ridiculous outfits, right? So a lot of times in Tales games, the women will have these like giant, like almost like wedding dresses. And I'm like, dude, you're not running around in fields in this like white dress. Like that's you're not wearing that. It looks stupid,
It
right?
does.
Like that's stupid. I know it's supposed to accent their personality and like that's part of the style, but I it looks stupid. And like with men, they do this all the time where they'll have like men in like robes, right? Like
Hmm.
like Orin wearing that red robe, like it looks pretty badass, but dude, no. Like I'm not like a jujitsu expert or anything, but having something like somebody could just grab onto while you're in combat is not a good idea. Like they're gonna
No.
toss you around the battlefield like nobody's business, and you have nothing to say about it because you wore a robe to like combat. Like no, you don't wear that. So like or like a lot of times like women will be wearing like thongs for like pants, or like Kuja in Final Fantasy 9, a man is wearing a thong for pants. Like
Hmm.
like stop doing that. I don't need that. But the thing is, I'm okay with a little bit of absurdity if it's subtle, right? So like Lost Odyssey, Kaim, the main character, his armor makes no sense, right? He's got armor on only one side, and it's this like silver embroidered armor on his arm, and then like on his other arm, like he has no armor, but like it's weird because that's his sword hand. Like you would want armor on that hand where people are
Yeah.
like swinging a sword at, and then like his armor on his chest, it goes down to his belly button, and it's like again, it looks it looks badass, but like it stops above his belly button, and then it like leaves his sides open, and I'm like, dude, they're definitely going for your intestines right there, like they just got to cut your belly open and you'll just bleed out like that. You need armor there, bro. But it's subtle. It's not extreme. It looks cool. I like that. But when it's like over the top, like Kuja or like Seymour with his like big robe that goes all the way down to his crotch, I'm
And his
just like,
ridiculous hair. Yeah.
yeah, like, what are you doing? Like, this is so stupid. So, um, that's some of my JRPG thoughts. Now, I have some complaints here with Western RPGs, but I just talked for like a minute and a half. Did you want to say anything on that before I continue?
I mean, yeah, I agree with those things. Especially like the otaku pandering stuff that's like just becomes so common,
Yeah.
right? That's really obnoxious and annoying. And I think it used to be the case that we probably just didn't get those games, right? Like
Mm-hmm. But now they're
they
starting to just localize them. Yeah.
they're just localizing them, yeah. But
I'm okay with them
there is a
existing.
certain demographic um, in Japan, especially that is
Really likes them.
likes that stuff. Yeah,
I'm okay with that existing, and I'm okay if you like that, and I'm okay if that's your thing. And those games should still be made, and they should still be localized, and they should still be come out here. But it seems like a lot of games are just like it's like a check mark in a box, right?
yeah.
Where
Like they have to have it so that that certain demographic or the
we'll
people
buy
who
the
like
game.
that stuff will buy this game as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
like exactly the checklist, like a sword wielding protagonist, right? Um, check. Okay, three three characters to romance. All right, check. You know, just keep going.
Yeah. 8-year old. That's a warrior, a battle hardened warrior. Check.
Check.
Yeah. It's
Bad guy revealed at the very end. You know, the true enemy. Check.
yeah. It's just like, come on, guys. Like you're starting to. It's like Spinal Tap for JRPGs. Like like you're getting ridiculous here. Yeah, I agree. So things about Western RPGs. Now, this is stuff that I think JRPGs generally do better. Obviously, there's going to be examples where it's not the case, but the never-ending dialogue prompts in Western RPGs with like all these different choices, right, that result in unforeseen circumstances. I hate that because what ends up happening is, for this 100-hour RPG, I end up spending like 40 of it on Google trying to figure out like what I should pick. Do I pick the red hat or the blue hat? You know, like I don't know, because there's been times where like you thought it was like a simple choice, and it ends up like really changing the course of the game. And I just don't like that about Western RPGs. Now there are games that have done it well, but by and large, most of the time, like there's at least one or two choices that are made where I thought like it was a very mundane choice and it ended up
Mm.
not being. And I feel like it disrespects my time. So, I mean, but like I said with Witcher 3, sometimes it can be really satisfying, but generally speaking with Western RPGs, I don't like that. Um, the other thing I was going to bring up with Western RPGs is just dialogue prompts options. Like a lot of times they don't characterize well what is going to happen. And so I mean like the example might say, no, I'm good. And I'll be like, oh, okay, that seems general. Like, no, I'm good. But then like the voice actor will be like, I don't take food from a slave. Get out of here, you piece of crap. I'm like, well, I like if you had put that, I wouldn't have chosen that. Like, now this guy hates me, like he's trying to fight me. Like, like
Right.
that didn't characterize like what you're trying to do, right? And then open worlds, man, they just get boring a lot of times. Like they start to feel interchangeable with other games, and it just feels like it pads the game out with like, okay, I can run for 20 minutes, but nothing happens for those 20 minutes. It's just like it's like, is that better? I don't know if it is. And not all open world games are like that, of course, but a lot of times it is. And that kind of leads me to my final point, which is something I think Western games and JRPGs have in common that I think sucks. There's way too much filler. I mean, there's too many games that are 80 to 90 hours to complete just the main story. If you want
Mm-hmm.
to make 90 hours with like side content, that's great. But like, dude, like they're your story does not need to be that long. It's not that good. Like
Yeah.
it's a very 35 to 40 hours. I'm okay with that. and then like give me some side stuff to do if I want to. But like Jesus Christ, dude. Like I work too much now to be doing that. Like
Yeah,
so
I agree with that one too. Yeah. Like it's interesting how perspective changes, right? Because when we were younger and you could only afford one game like every
right, couple of months.
whatever 3 4 months, yeah, you wanted that game to last you a long time. The more hours on the back, it said on the back of the box, was like a selling point, right?
Yeah. Well, the
but
thing,
now but now you look at it and it's like, well, quality, or yeah, quality over quantity, right? There's no way that 100 hours is as good as the first 10, like from beginning to end, right?
well, the thing,
Unless
the thing is
maybe
the
some games, but
the
yeah.
back then too, like it was easier for me to I think appreciate a game also because like you said, I if I bought a game and it sucked, like I had it for 4 months, like until I could get another one. Like I'm playing that game.
Yeah, you're gonna make the most of it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna find some good qualities in it, like you know. So, but now it's like I don't need to play this. you know, if it doesn't
Hmm.
get me in the first 4 or 5 hours or something. I'm generally I'm out. I'm not playing this. So yeah, it's definitely interesting how things have changed. But do you have any other unpopular RPG opinions?
I do, but nothing major coming up, coming to mind right now. I'm sure I do.
Yeah.
We do have
Uh
some comments
oh boy.
that we've had. Quite a
Yeah.
few.
Well,
We can't get to everybody, but Tayson's gaming spot says there's two things that he doesn't like in RPGs: um, missable items, things that you can miss, right? Or I suppose that could be whole missable quests that sometimes, right? If you progress a certain too far into the story, now it's too late to go back and you missed out on whatever it is,
yeah.
that equipment or item or whatever it may be. And then when you have to chat with characters over and over in order to get the full conversation of what they're saying. That's his second one.
Yeah.
And then
Totally agree with that. It's just this is very redundant. I don't like just give it to me the first time.
yeah, we also had a comment from Terry309, who was uh,
Not to be confused with Terry 308.
yeah, this is Terry309. Well, he's was commenting while I was talking about the issue of grinding, right? And he's kind of like you. He says like, yeah, I want the ability to grind. He enjoys that aspect of, you know, leveling up your characters, getting all the best gear. But then he does point out that a lot of times the way the game designers will go around this is they'll add different difficulty modes, and then also just leave it up to the players to do their own challenge runs of the game, right? Like low level runs, or like low level equipment runs from beginning to end.
One run that I really want to do on that point is the no sphere grid challenge for Final Fantasy X.
Hmm.
There's a YouTuber. His name's he's all about Final Fantasy X, but he does the Final Fantasy movies. But he also does a lot of other content. I think it's Danzig or something like that. You can look it up.
Yeah,
But he does like a complete like run of the no sphere grid, just explaining how to do it. And like it's really interesting some of the ways that people have found to replay these games and overcome these obstacles. And it makes me want to go back and play that game just because it's like, dude, like I've played that game so many times to where it's easy. And so having like a challenge run like that might make it like kind of like a new experience. So um just thought I'd bring that up.
yeah, that's true.
Mike says it bothers me when you can't recruit all the characters in a single playthrough. Are you talking about Chrono Cross?
That could be Chrono Cross, or maybe more recently, Star Ocean First Departure R.
Yeah.
When you recruit certain characters, it locks out the other ones. So
Yeah,
then you have
but
to
I
go through it
find
again, and you get those characters, but it locks out the ones you got on your first playthrough.
yeah, that's just a really like cheap way of having a replayability. Like, oh, like you want this extra character? Now you have to replay the same content. Like it's like,
Hmm.
mm,
The
I don't know about that.
Star Ocean 2 kind of had the same thing as well, from memory.
Yeah.
We have another comment here from Terry who says, "I just hate true endings where you have to do very specific things to get them." Yeah, that can be really obnoxious as well.
Dude.
That's
Yes.
mostly a JRPG thing, right?
Okay. Well, with bad endings from like multiple endings,
Yeah.
I think that's shared on both fronts because
Mm.
like I think Western RPGs do a better job of just having every ending being good, but I do think JRPGs are more sadistic when they do that, where it's just like, no, you got a totally crappy ending because
Hmm.
because you didn't do like I'm thinking of Final Fantasy X too, where it's just like the degree that you have to go to get the 100% ending with that, where you have to like dodge all the lightning and then like you have to like do the like impossible button inputs and then like all the other crap. Like you have to make sure you don't interrupt like the old man while he's talking. And like, it's just so much stuff that has nothing to do with the plot. Right. And like, why does Titus care whether or not you did the lightning challenge? He doesn't. Like the fate don't care. Like, so, I mean, it's stuff like that that I think gets on my nerves more so with JRPGs, but um, I think with Western RPGs, it's way easier not to get the ending that you want though, and in general though, because like it's
So
just
many choices. Yeah.
yeah, like everyone you talk to, there's all these dialogue prompts, and it's just that's just the nature of the beast, man. You have to be on Google, just glued to it, just like
To
making
find
sure
out
that
what.
yeah, making
Yeah.
sure. I mean, dude, I was doing that with my most recent playthrough of Witcher 3, and there's a lot of endings to that game, right? And
Mhm.
I kind of got tired of Google and I made one decision without looking it up and I like totally screwed myself.
You locked yourself out of
Like
three of the best endings or something.
yeah, I
Yeah.
could still get a good ending, but I'm just like, dude, come on. Like, and I was like looking at it like, do I want to go back like 12 hours? No, I don't.
No.
I'm just sticking with it. Like, so it's one of those things where like it can be good, it can be bad. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyways, I think we got to get out of here. It's been almost
Yeah.
2 hours and 10 minutes. So this has
There's
been
a
a
lot of
long
comments
podcast.
today. Sorry we can't get to all of them.
Yeah. But
Keep the discussion going on our comments.
yeah, just join our Discord. We have a link in the description. So,
Hmm.
all right, guys, that's it for us this week. I'm sure Eric will be back next week. I know he's feeling a little bit under the weather, but he seems to be doing not too shabby, just not stream worthy. So I'm sure he'll be back next week. And like I said before, join our Discord. Let us know what questions you want us to cover next week. That always really helps. And I think that's all I got. So I'll catch you all next week. Take it easy, guys.
See you next time.